Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carter Walker. I love talking about movies, music, comics, and games. Sorry about that little hiatus. There was a while where there was just like no new movies coming out, and I finished my reviews, and I definitely didn't stagger them. But anyways, we got a new movie, I believe. It's called Suncoast, and I haven't heard anyone talk about this. It kind of flew under the radar. My understanding is that it came out Friday, which was February 9th. I could totally be wrong on this, but I just saw it advertised. It just barely dropped on Hulu. And it was really popular at Sundance Film Festival, and seeing as I kind of got shafted at the film festival, I decided to check it out. I really wanted to give my thoughts on Suncoast. And Suncoast is directed by Laura Chinn. It stars Nico Parker, Laura Linney, and Woody Harrelson. And it follows a young girl whose brother is put into hospice, and she struggles to navigate her teenage life and try and socialize, and befriends a man who is protesting one of the biggest medical cases, I think, in history, or at least in this film. This is Laura Chinn's first film. She both wrote and directed it. It's like semi-autobiographical, so that means that it was pretty much real. And a big positive that I can give this film is that she really puts you in the life of a young teenager living this life. She puts you into that perspective, and you're able to just kind of see and sit and simmer in this perspective and really understand everything that's going on in her life. And Nico Parker as Doris actually does a really fantastic job here. She's someone who doesn't really have a lot of interaction outside of her brother, who is mute, and her mom, who is just raging all of the time for understandable reasons, but I'll get into that later. And so when she kind of interacts with other people and she tries to talk to other people, it comes off as very awkward, very stunted, but also very natural. And Nico Parker does a great job of conveying this person who is just dying to get out, who is trying to escape, trying to live and breathe, and just has a really hard time articulating that, really hard time kind of getting that out there and getting herself out there. And I found the scenes where she's interacting with other people like Woody Harrelson or her friends really endearing and really interesting to watch. And I thought that, again, Nico Parker did a fantastic job. The rest of the cast is great as well. Laura Linney here is amazing. She is just so angry and cold. And the film has you understand why she's like that. It definitely has you side with Doris the whole movie because, you're watching through Doris's eyes. Doris is the main character here, and you're kind of watching everything. And then her mom just comes in so angry all the time, stressed from working. And you get the sense that she's kind of crazy, but she really does care for her children. And you see that kind of struggle in Laura Linney. And there's multiple times throughout the runtime where I'm like, okay, I kind of understand where she's coming from. And then something happens where I'm like, dude, she sucks. And that just kind of repeats throughout the runtime. That's kind of a thing that I wasn't too thrilled about. However, Laura Linney's performance really saved that character. It easily could have come off as just the biggest, just awful, most terrible parent figure. Understandably so, you kind of see why she's like this. However, she is just so awful that it is very hard to root for her throughout the film. And for a first-time director, Laura Chinn does a pretty decent job at wrangling everything together. There are a lot of faults in this film that I'll get into later on, but I think that for a first-time director, it definitely could have gone worse, and she manages to get great performances out of her actors and actresses. And so, honestly, for that, I just have to give props and credit. And it's also very beautifully shot, and everything looks fantastic. There's a lot of great uses of wide angle lenses. And although some people might have an issue because at the bottom and the top of the screen, it does get a little blurry. So the depth of focus is a little whack in this film. But I thought that it added a very good kind of nostalgic, you're reflecting on these memories kind of aspect that the film was shooting for. So I thought it worked out in its favor. However, I can see why people wouldn't like it. And another positive I want to give the film is something that I've seen people actually not really like online, and it's that it doesn't really pick a side in a lot of things. It presents this argument to you of hospice and assisted suicide in a way, and of someone who is on a feeding tube, gets that tube removed. There's people protesting for, people protesting against. You have Doris in the middle of it who sees her brother just dying, and he's not doing anything. He's just sitting there. He can't talk. He can't walk. He has to be assisted in everything he does, and she is of the understanding that he's not really living. And I loved that the aspect of this film just kind of presents everything to you. You get one case of, I forget the woman's name, where everyone's protesting with the feeding tube, and then you get Doris and her brother, and the different characters kind of come and clash and ideologies and opinions, but it's all in a loving manner, and that's where Woody Harrelson comes in. And I really liked his scenes with Nico Parker. I thought their characters did a really good job of just interacting. They had a good dynamic together to where they discuss religion, the value of life, and everything like that. And at the end of the movie, it doesn't exactly take a side. It just kind of shows you these are these people's opinions. We're not taking sides. This is just how it goes. And I really appreciate and applaud the movie for that, for not really picking a side. I know some people are like, why didn't it pick a side? It should have a stance. I don't know if this is a movie that needs a stance. It almost feels like Laura Chinn is saying, this is how I view it. This is how other people viewed it. You decide. And I actually really respected that ideology. Getting into the mixed, this is something to where the parts are almost greater than the whole. And by that I mean that the parts, the individual scenes, the scenes of Doris and her friends, the scenes of Doris and Paul, that's Woody Harrelson's character, the scenes of Doris and her mom are all really good, but the through line connecting it seems almost a little confusing and all over the place, and it's not sure where it wants to go until the last 30 minutes or so, to where you're just kind of seeing scenes of a life and scenes of something happening. You get to see just Laura Linney be a terrible mom. You get to see Doris have fun, meet new people, have friends, kind of leave her brother, and then she goes back and stays, and it just kind of like repeats itself throughout the course of the runtime, to where I almost feel like it could have benefited from more of something or less of something. And this is where my personal preference, it's not a very long film. I was like, I almost feel like we could have used more fleshing out with her friends, more moments with that, because the moments that she gets with her friends aren't very meaningful, except for like one or two. It's just kind of like, she made these new friends, look how cool they are. And then she likes a boy, but that doesn't really go anywhere, nothing really happens. And so the majority of the film is focused on this issue with her brother, and it does come back to that at the end, but there's a little bit in the middle, kind of beginning of the third act, where it just lost me quite a bit, and I was like, what's going on here? What are we doing? And like I mentioned before, Laura Linney, if it wasn't Laura Linney playing this character, she'd be extremely unlikable. She's just written to be so unlikable and very hard to empathize with. Like I said, you have a small understanding of where she's coming from, but it's just so hard to empathize with this woman who is just showing no sympathy, no understanding for her daughter, and just pouring everything into her disabled son. And I'm sure it's something that happens more often than I'd like to think. However, it just is very hard to get behind that, and the last act of the film kind of revolves around you understanding Laura Linney and kind of like, okay, I get it. And so for me, that didn't quite pull through. And getting into my negatives here, honestly, this is a movie to where I just didn't get super invested into it. Something didn't quite click, and this is where I'm just going to leave it up to the audience. If you've seen this movie, let me know what you think. If you haven't, go check it out. I definitely think it's worth a watch. For me, something just didn't quite click. Something didn't register with the emotion with everything, to where movies like Mid-90s or Lady Bird or other coming-of-age movies like Stand By Me, I don't even love Stand By Me, but it still like clicked with me more than this one, to where you understand everything and you get that sense of like nostalgic, you get that sense of growing up, of coming of age. I didn't really feel that with Suncoast. Like I said, it's very well made. It's a great movie. I can see why it won a lot of awards at Sundance, why it was a big favorite at Sundance. However, for me, something just kind of felt missing. And whether that was more development for the friends, more development between the relationship of Laura Linney and Nico Parker, or just more development of Nico Parker kind of getting to live in her world a little bit more, because she's so quiet, she's alone so often, but you don't really get a sense of who she is. She's just this person who's just like angry and alone, wants to be with people, but then like she's with people and she's just awkward, and you don't really get to sit with a lot of things in here. That just kind of jumps around quite a bit. And so like I mentioned in the mixed, a lot of the parts are coming around and clashing together, and it doesn't really come together to form the most perfect circle or the most perfect part that it could, to where sometimes there's like, okay, we can remove that, add this, and it would be great. And like I mentioned, something just didn't click with me. It could just be me. So overall, I'm going to give Suncoast like a 6.5 out of 10. I thought it was a very well-made movie. I enjoyed a lot of the performances, but something just didn't click, and the emotional resonance just wasn't there for me. So overall, like I said, 6.5 out of 10. It was decent. I'm glad I watched it, and I had a good time watching it. So, what more could I ask for? But anyways, guys, have you seen Suncoast? If you have, what did you think about it? I don't know. I haven't really seen anyone talking about it. So let me know down in the comment section below. Let me know if there's anything I should review next. This week, I'm going to have a Madam Web review out, unfortunately for myself. As always, guys, I'm Carter Walker, and have a great rest of your day.